Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us for Low Maintenance Fruit and Nut Trees. My name is Alexander Warshall. I'm the Member Communications Coordinator for NOFA New York, making sure everything goes along smoothly this morning. I also have Jessica from NOFA New York on as technical support. If you have any specific technical questions, please feel free to send them to her in the chat.
Understand that it's being recorded.
Just as a reminder, please remain muted with your video off during presentations. If we have enabled closed captioning, these captions are auto-generated and they're not perfect. But if you'd like to see the captions, there should be a notification at the top of the screen allowing you to do so. This workshop is being recorded and will be shared on the conference website and the mobile app shortly after this presentation. Feel free to introduce yourself and ask questions using the chat function. And if any questions come up during the presentation, please put them in the chat and we will discuss them at the end. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, NOFA, for having Scott and myself here. I'm just gonna pretend like I'm gonna green screen us, so you pretend like we're outside in this very balmy day. You have to forgive us because, like probably many of you, we live fairly rural, and we had a power outage yesterday, and then right after our power outage, although we primarily heat with wood, our oil burner, which is our backup, decided to squirt water all over the place. So we've had no heat pretty much almost for 24 hours. And so I was still operating that. Today was Friday and not Saturday. Anyway, let's move forward because I'm very excited to share with you guys about cold hardy fruits and nuts. I'm going to just give you a little overview about Hortus arboretum, and I believe Scott's going to be able to join us, which is great. So we are, let me just move forward here. We are located in the beautiful Lower Hudson Valley in Ulster County, New York, in a town called Stone Ridge. And I'm just showing some random pictures of the arboretum. We have been gardening for over 20 years. We currently now manage 21 acres, about 8 or so are cultivated gardens. And although today we're going to talk about cold hardy fruits and nuts with you, we also have a whole range of woody taxa, a lot that is supposedly, this is Scott, a lot that's supposedly not hardy in our zone 6 environment, but in fact, we have been testing things for many years and it seems to do all right. We love our native plants as well as some of our non-natives as well. And our gardens are open starting Mother's Day through Halloween on weekends. And we have lots of different events. We do an art in the garden event. We do a lot of food tasting. You're looking at an Arctic kiwi vine over what we call our dome. We're going to be talking about that as our first fruit. And one of our things that we found over time was that if you taste something that you don't know, then you are more apt to want to try it. So we are really big proponents of coming for people who come to the garden to taste things. So that is a really big thing. And that's how we've learned that people will want to try these real low maintenance plants in their own place. As I've said, we test out a lot of different things. We have, and here's our hardy cactus bed. We also grow opuntia. And in Christmas time, we do eat the paddles, but I'm not talking about that today. And that's our blueberry collection. Those are ones that we've actually planted, but we're lucky enough to have high bush blueberries as well as low bush already in the gardens, not planted by us, but thankfully by some birds or deer. Yes. And as I said, we do tours, classes. The book really came out of our experience of working with all 50 plants in the book. We've grown every one of them. Some with a lot of success, some still struggling. And as I said earlier, we really believe in tasting food. This is from our Illinois Everbearing mulberry. And we love to do our presentations in person, but we're so grateful to be here today. Maybe you guys are in bed with a cup of coffee or tea or mate or whatever.
There's someone in front of a Dunstan American
Chestnut taking photos. And one last thing, if you're an artist, a visual artist, and are interested in doing a residency here, we offer 3 visual art residencies and 1 writer residencies. You can find out more on our website, which is still in the process of being rebuilt, but you can still kind of access the older one. And I'm going to go right into, do you want to, since I've been talking, why don't you introduce this beautiful plant that we love so much?
This is Actinidia colomicta arctic kiwi. Some people get this confused with the Chinese hardy kiwi, which is Actinida arguta. We often recommend this one over that one because the Chinese kiwi, although it's good, can take 10 years to produce fruit.
Sometimes longer.
And this one often produces fruit probably within 3 seasons. It also has the added benefit of putting those beautiful variegated silver, white, and pink patterns all over the leaves. Actually, this was introduced originally into England as an ornamental plant, really not as a food plant.
Not as food, yeah.
So you can see the beautiful leaves forming. You need 1 male plant and at least 1 female plant. 1 male plant can fertilize, I believe it's up to 8 female plants. And sometimes it's hard to sex the plants, and unfortunately, sometimes nurseries will not sell them correctly sexed.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We get asked a lot, how can I tell the difference between my plants, what's male and what's female?
And generally speaking, when the flowers open on the female, their flowers the outer flowers are about 5 white petals, and then inside is a tiny little kind of dandelion star-shaped flower. On the bottom of that, you can often see a tiny little ovary of a little baby kiwi that's like, a 1/16 of an inch, and it's an 1/8 of an inch.
So that's on the left-hand side of the screen.
And the male plants just have a
pollen sacs,
yeah,
the anthers.
Yeah. And do not have the little tiny kiwi on the bottom.
The ovary is what he's saying.
Yes, they do not have the ovary. These are rated as zone 3. And there's the kiwi starting to grow out. There's variable sizes. I can tell from these, if you'll notice, these have kind of a lozenge shape to them. Those are a double-sized variety called Victor that we bought that was found in Siberia. That's another thing, because these are incredibly cold hardy. They're basically Arctic plants. They're very adaptable. We have grown these in part shade under a butternut tree, which is a horrible place to grow something because of Jugolone oil.
Right.
But they have produced fruit in that situation.
In the part shade, yeah.
But in full sunlight, these plants riot and they produce thousands of kiwi. For us, that's almost too much. When you cook Arctic kiwi down, it kind of turns a dark charcoal gray brown.
However, I have found freezing the fruit is really a great way for saving them, and that they do store well in the fridge. And unlike the supermarket type, which they're related to, you could see there's no fuzz on these. So a lot of times these are being marketed as kiwi grapes. Actually, the Chinese kiwi are the ones that are marketed as kiwi grapes. To the best of my knowledge, no one is producing Arctic kiwi for market. So just something to, think about. I think this is a great market food for farmers to think about for, growing for the season. It's basically from end of July through September, our vines will produce fruit.
And to my knowledge, these have never been hit by a major pest.
Right.
animals will occasionally steal fruit, birds, but because we have so much of it, it doesn't really matter. We get enough that people can taste them. There's a,
Mhm.
I described Victor, which is the one that's down in the lower left, that's sort of a double size. And the other ones just kind of display the wildness of the vine, that there's a variety of shapes and sizes.
But for us, we find like these taste all the same. There might be
Yes.
someone out there that's growing a different cultivar that has a different opinion about whether or not their Arctic kiwis taste any different. But for us, the Arctic kiwi tastes pretty
Similar.
much all the same.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter so much about the variety or cultivar that's available. Yeah. This is Aronia chokeberry. This is something that Scott will never speak about because it's not one of his favorite fruits.
Yeah.
Typically, Aronia is thought of more as a wildlife edible, not necessarily for people, but I feel like that's changing more and more in the States. If you're from Europe or have ever visited Poland, you would know that Aronia is about 70 to 80% of their market is all based in Europe, and they have large farms of just growing Aronia. I think it's the black Aronia, the Melanocarpa.
In Poland.
In Poland. These are the fruits. They're starting to set. This is in mid-August. Aronia is a really adaptable and tough shrub. We've seen this growing out in
Swamps and shade.
on mountain cliffs on
Yeah,
the side.
And Mount Batty in Maine,
Mhm.
embedded in cliff faces,
Mhm.
very harsh environments.
Mhm. Lately, there have become a lot of cultivars that have become available, although taxonomically, there's still a lot of confusion. There is the black Aronia or black chokeberry. There's red chokeberry that has really been more marketed toward birds and wildlife. And then depending on how you fall into identifying plants, there is a purple chokeberry that some people feel like it's its own species. Some people feel like it's a cross, and that's the purple one. And that I know that when I've seen Aronia sold in local nurseries and farm stands, all I ever see, it really is the black chokeberry. Why do I like it? Well, I like it because in early spring, it produces these beautiful large flowers that rival any Malus or even Pyrus, the pear or apple family of which it's related. Again, here are the beautiful early spring flowers, and the fruit is starting to develop. So I say I like it, where Scott says he doesn't. And if you think about the name chokeberry, where did that common name come from? It came from because the fruits are astringent, also hairy, as you could tell in this photo.
They look like little apples.
They do look like little apples. There's lots of tricks that I have read about, that we've tried, that I've talked about in terms of trying to reduce the astringency. Because of the dark color, they're highly nutritive, a lot of anthocyanins in there, and really a very, very healthful berry that have been now more and more mixed with other more sweeter fruits like grapes to make drinks and blended aids. Again, very, very popular in Europe. As a little side note, whoops, I'm just going to see if I can go back. I don't know if I can. Yes. As a side note, when we had traveled abroad, we met a man, I forget
in Bali,
where he
and
was
he
from.
was from, I think, Switzerland, and he was doing a teaching forum in Bali to kind of establish teachers. And he said, "Would you like to try Aronia?" We said, "We don't really
No
like
thanks,
it." He
no
said,
thanks.
"Actually, I because of how healthy they are, I buy them dried. I know they're from the United States." And he gave us a bag of them to try, and they were actually quite palatable.
Delicious. So one of the tricks I've been trying that seemed to work, that if I don't want to eat them or out of hand, which is pretty, takes a certain personality. If you freeze them and then dry them, or just freeze them and then use them, some of the astringency is definitely lost, and it makes them much more, I'll use the word palatable, but sometimes they're actually tasty. I find that this is an important edible to have, even if it's something not for yourself, for your wildlife. Let's put it that way.
It's zone 4, and fairly adaptable
Yeah.
in size variable. There are dwarf creeping cultivars, and there are cultivars that get maybe 8 feet.
There's Morton, Nero,
Viking.
Viking, which we grow a couple of those.
Yes, a lot of what has
Yeah.
happened is European people have used this as a health food. So they've taken these and they bred varieties and then sold them back to the United States.
Right.
Actually.
Anyway, I think this is a worthy fruit if you're, if you have a spot that you're not sure and you don't want to put something large in, putting in 1 or 2. I think
Also
it's great.
spectacularly beautiful fall color.
Yes.
Fluorescent red orange.
Yeah,
fall
apologies. I
color.
didn't add that. I'll make a note to do that for the next time.
Asamina trilova pawpaw, or my favorite word for this, which is hillbilly mangoes. These are now, pawpaws now undergoing kind of a cultural renaissance in the United States. It was neglected for a long, long time. And then there were a number of books and a New York Times culinary article on this. And a lot of people are starting to kind of plant this again, which is great, because we've grown this for about maybe 14 years and it's never had a single pest problem. And it doesn't mind droughts and it doesn't mind too much rain either. Small amounts of animals have preyed upon the fruit, but it's been largely left alone. The worst things that people encounter with pawpaws is, number one, when pawpaws are young, they need shade because they don't like full sunlight. But once they become mature, they need full sunlight. So right now, what we've advised people to do is they're going to probably get small trees, is to put small trees in and then put like a tomato cage or a shade cloth covering for maybe 2 or 3 years until the trees get to be about 4.5 feet.
4 to 5 feet, yeah.
And then at that point, they can take full sunlight. But until that point, they need to be shaded.
You're looking at here unopened buds that hopefully will start up around end of March, early April.
And the other boo-boo about pawpaws that people don't like is sometimes they can take 10 years to produce fruit. And the reason that is I think because of the tap roots. These plants are, if you have a 10-foot tree, it's a good bet that you probably have a 10-foot taproot. The taproots take a long time, and there's a point where the taproots get a certain length and it tells the tree, okay, ready. And until the taproots on your trees get that length, they don't do anything. And it's almost like overnight, the trees just start producing fruit. And I think it has to do with the taproots. And these are the beautiful, strange flowers. Oh, I think they're beautiful.
I think they're beautiful.
They're said to look like rotting meat because these attract flies. There's a myth that pawpaws are only pollinated by carrion flies because of the smell they emit the stench of like rotting meat. And this is not a carrion fly. Quite frankly, I think they attract any fly that they can attract.
Yeah.
And we've seen blue bottle flies and red, and there's a small beetle there. And this is upside down looking at the pollen, and you can see they start out, the pollen sacs kind of look like a little tiny golf ball, and then they pop open and the pollen is released. And you can see the one on the right is unripe, and the one on the left is the pollen starting to be distributed. And sometimes you get mixed pollination because flies, quite frankly, are lousy.
They're not lousy.
Well,
they're a little lazy.
They're lazy pollinators. They don't move around as opposed to butterflies and wasps, which tend to jump around and move around a lot. So I give them a little help by taking a paintbrush and distributing the pollen. However, I don't climb up on ladders so that the trees are being pollinated by flies besides me. And you can see here the little baby fruit starting to form. This would be probably June, July when they're first starting, and now they're getting larger, which is probably for us around August. And then this is when they're starting to fully form. And when people ask us the flavor of this, I would say it has kind of a banana custard flavor with maybe a little hint of mango.
Definitely mango.
These do not taste like something that is native to the United States. These are related to the soursop family. And those are all tropical. And this is the one member of that family that shot up the Yucatan Peninsula and went over into the up to Florida and places like that, and then shot up through the upper Midwest and dead ended about where the bottom part of the Great Lakes are so the bottom part of Canada gets these too. So these can take up to about maybe 10 or 15 below zero. If you're going to grow these in the coldest part of the United States,
Yeah.
I think it's important that you try to
Find
find
a cultivar,
grafted cultivars that have a reputation for
ripening
yielding fruit.
earlier.
And you need two plants. They're self-sterile. You can have two wild seedlings or two grafted cultivars.
Or wild and a grafted.
And the very hot thing now are Pedersen pawpaws. And unfortunately, Pedersen pawpaws are only grafted by a handful of people. And I say unfortunate because they're double or triple size. They're quite huge. And if you want those, you should get them ASAP because by now they're all
I
sold
think you're
out.
actually buying them for 2025 at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah.
Because there's only a limited amount being grafted and there's so many people that are really interested in having pawpaws. You know, people might argue that grafted cultivar is much, much tastier than the straight species.
And I do not.
We don't
I
find
do
that,
not agree
but
with that.
you know,
We have Taylor and Mitchell, which are perfectly delightful, and two wild seedlings.
yeah,
They all taste the same. I would say the difference between the grafted ones are the grafted ones tend to be a little larger and
Yeah.
consistent, but my wild seedlings produce small, medium, and large fruit.
Correct,
It's the
yeah.
same.
I think also with the grafting, besides the earlier ripening, which is important, they are also looking at having less seeds in the fruit. So
And-
it's typically a zone 5 plant.
Yeah, sunflower is one of the ones that's selected for
for
early
early
ripening.
Mhm.
Again, in the coldest part of the United States, it might just be that they would fall off the tree if you don't have an early ripening variety. Castanea dentatum cross mollissima Dunstan. Many people know that blight was introduced that killed most of the American, if not all of the American chestnuts in the United States. A man named Howard Dunstan was given cuttings of an Ohio seedling that survived the blight. Then he contacted the US Department of Agriculture and he asked for varieties of Chinese chestnut that were particularly sweet and flavorful. He raised those for several years and then he took the pollen from the Chinese and crossed it with the American, raised those for several years, got seedlings, took the pollen from those and went back to the American and crossed back. So when you buy a Dunstan chestnut, the amount of what is American and Chinese is variable, but you have a tree that's 60 to 80% American and a little bit Chinese and Asian. And that is important because the blight kills the American.
Mhm.
We've been growing these for about 12 or 14 years and we've never had the blight hit our
Mhm.
trees,
Mhm.
but it's something to be concerned about. We had dying American chestnuts that were beautiful originally
Yep.
on our property and we
Yeah.
got rid of them so that they would not be near these trees.
And when he says got rid of them, he means he dug out the root system
because they sucker from the root system.
so it's really important to do.
and
We
so-
feel it's
yeah, and so
important to do
these are the
that.
baby,
These are the male
flowers,
the catkins.
just starting to crack open in kind of what's midsummer.
I say
or-
midsummer. They're
yeah.
actually late flowering tree. Beautiful. I mean, one of the things I talk about is the ornamental qualities that edible plants bring. And the aronia is a great example, right? Great flowers, great, beautiful displays of fruit that persist. The same with pretty much everything we're going to talk about today, because when you start to look at the tree as a holistic plant, you see it offers so many things, beautiful glossy leaves, interesting flowers. And here you can kind of see
The female
Mm-hmm.
flower in the middle there, which is on the end of male
at
sprays
the
of
yeah,
flowers.
at the tips.
And again, as she said, these are handsome, beautiful trees. They
Stunning.
they need a lot of room. I think these are a combination of the height of a Chinese and American. So these can get probably 30 to 50 feet. So they need space and you need two trees to get the nuts.
Also, I just want to point out, I actually never really looked at this that closely, but I'm looking at the upper left and there's two leaves. There's one that's going out to the left that has kind of more of a flattish base. And then towards the top, it's a little bit more rounded. And I'm just pointing this out to show you that this is not a grafted tree. The genetic difference between all of these trees, because as Scott said, Dr. Dunstan had been going back and forth between American and Chinese and crossing I think it was almost close to 40 years of research and work. So, so yes, there's some genetic mix up here. It's not a straight American, but we find that that's okay,
And
quite
our
frankly.
trees have variable buds. Chinese
Yeah.
chestnuts have rounded buds, American have pointed, and
Yep.
our buds are kind of in between.
Some are, yeah.
softened, kind of cone shape. And this is the beautiful,
Beautiful, yeah.
formidable nut husks, which have to be handled with thick gloves because they're quite prickly.
And these are generally in September, mid to end September. It's environmental, right? So it depends on what, what our season has brought. I would say these were a little bit later this year because
was
of the
drought.
drought that we had, and we didn't give extra irrigation.
So we didn't get as many nuts.
Right, because it's that last couple of weeks where the actual nut meats inside the husk is forming and developing. So it is critical during that time, if you're really like, if you're a chestnut farmer and this is what you're relying on, that you are going to want to give extra irrigation towards the August, September, I'd say, excuse me, July, August, if you're not getting a steady 1-inch rainfall.
And as these start to ripen, squirrels will cock a bright eye upon them because they don't get to eat chestnuts very much. So what we tend to do is when you see them start to crack like that up in the left, I take hooks and knock them down. And then I put them into boxes inside of our house and let them ripen slowly. If you wait for the nuts to fall out into the ground,
Yeah,
there
too
are
late.
squirrels and chipmunks who wait all day long who are willing to oblige you by stealing them and taking them instantly. So,
But look, again, look how beautiful that is. When you have a very healthy chestnut tree, you often will have 3 nuts per seed capsule.
and those are zone 5, so you know.
You can do this.
Okay, this is Corylus americana, American hazelnut. I love American hazelnuts. Those are native to our area. You need two shrubs to cross-pollinate, and these will cross-pollinate with European hazelnuts. Fairly tough, fairly adaptable. Ours tend to grow in the wild in our area, in the Hudson and the kind of Catskill Mountains along rivers and streams, so they can take slightly wet soil.
But we've
But
also seen, we've
and
got in dry
yeah.
areas
I've
as
also
well.
seen these in Martha's Vineyard near beach dunes, not in complete sand, but very dry-ish, kind of sandy soil. So they're fairly adaptable.
And interestingly enough, the male flowers actually begin to form in late fall and then will persist on the tree. Again, another ornamental decorative feature of this plant.
And that's why these are wind pollinated, not insects. So very soon these will start opening up. And you can see by this photograph, it's still sort of winter and insects are not out alive yet. So these rely on the wind to pollinate them. And the males slowly start to open
Yeah,
out.
they elongate.
And then the females follow that. And you look, this is my wife holding a branch so you can see the female flowers, which are tiny
Tiny,
and microscopic.
teeny.
It's hard to believe that
Yeah.
those produce
The nut.
sprays of
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah, it's crazy. And that's why the catkins are so important and really rely on having wind to pollinate. And you can kind of imagine that whole action in March and April.
And I believe this is a double size. This is Slate, named after George Slate, who ran Cornell's fruit lab, who was a botanist. And Slate has American gene pool crossed with European to make a kind of a larger size nut, like the kind the confectioners use for making like Nutella and chocolate hazelnut spread. The flavor of European and bread varieties in American is all the same kind
Similar,
of a beautiful kind of peanut buttery flavor. It's really delicious.
Nutty flavor.
And I eat them raw also. They're great.
But the big difference is size.
Yeah.
Quite
yeah.
frankly, comes down to that.
And that's
so.
again the double size one, probably Slater Geneva. And this is European hazelnut. And this happens to be a purple leaf cultivar. So you get those beautiful pink catkins kind
Gorgeous.
of opening.
And as Scott had mentioned earlier, if you happen to have a European variety as well as an American, they do cross-pollinate one another, which is lovely. We actually got this again for the ornamental feature of its beautiful, beautiful early spring foliage. gorgeous color.
There is one issue that comes up with
Yeah.
people, and it's European hazelnut blight, Eastern hazelnut blight,
EFB.
EFB. That can kind of kill plants if you see
European,
that.
yeah.
European. The American does not
Get
get the blight
affected.
because it has evolved to resist it. So we've grown these for 14 years and we've never had a problem with the blight, but if you're going to put in 50 hazelnut hedges, you should
Yeah.
be conscious of this.
You might not want to
Um,
have a lot of European
And you just
in
keep
there.
an eye out for the blight, which looks like little symmetrical pock marks along branches, and it can be pruned out. You just have to, we're on the lookout for that, but we've never had the
Never
problem.
had it here. Here you're actually kind of seeing midsummer, where the foliage color is now reverting back to green. But this is it.
Spectacularly beautiful.
This is probably
So-
what, 18, 19 years?
Yeah, so
and
this is
yeah,
Corylus avellana Rotzeller. I guess that's German, Rotzeller. And then we have another one, which is, I think,
no, I don't remember.
yeah.
I don't have enough copy yet to
There-
tell you the other one that
But
we have, but
Rotzeller is
is
really great.
wonderful.
And then the other important thing I would say,
Yeah,
do not buy
it
grafted
grafted.
hazelnuts, because you will spend your life pruning them. What will happen is shoots will constantly come out and you will have to cut the shoots away. So get one that's rooted.
yeah. But again, look at the invulcors of these, just stunning.
The name of the other cultivar is Ruby.
Ruby.
Yes.
I'm not sure which is which, Scott, if Ruby's.
Ruby is probably the one that's
On
on
the
the
left,
left.
yeah.
Yes. And the
Rotzeller
Rotzeller
on
is
the
on
right.
the right.
Stunning. And one of the things that as we said, for the chestnuts, it's true really of all nut trees. I'm sure those of you joining us today, this morning, who are growing nut trees, maybe you have some great strategies to share with others about how you protect your nuts, so to speak. But you know, one of the things is that over time, you hoping to have really productive fruiting plants, that having some taken away by wildlife is not a big deal. And sometimes when that happens, I think as
Chipmunks
Scott
and
was about to
squirrels,
say, do
chipmunks
your
and squirrels
propagation for you.
we'll do little patches in them, and then you'll see these strange purple leaves and go, oh, that's a hazelnut, and you realize that a chipmunk and squirrel did farming for you
Yeah.
accidentally.
Without paying them.
Yes,
How nice.
yes. You want to take European?
Sure.
clock frame up?
This is Cydonia oblonga, Baltic quince. This is actually, it's funny, I'm talking about this because this is one of Scott's favorite all-time
chime
plants.
in.
I'm sure he will. This specimen we've been probably growing for close to 19, 20 years as well. We have never once had any issue with it. You could see how floriferous it is in the spring, just stunning. And we love the flowers. They kind of have this pink and white candy stripe, like a candy cane stripe. Let's see if you could see it a little better here in these photos. It is a self-fertile plant. So this is one that you really only need one. So it's perfect for a backyard or front yard environment.
And it only grows a small size, about 8 to 12 feet.
Yeah.
Just to stay small.
And again, just showing off some of the beautiful mid-spring flowers of these plants, and the flowers themselves are sizable. They're not too shabby or small. And here is which quince is this?
This is Boyer.
This is a Boyer quince. the
Boyer is an
yeah.
American variety, I think from the 20s and 30s. We are now opting more toward the Baltic quinces.
Yeah.
And when you say Baltic quinces, people living in that area get kind of upset because all
Mhm.
quinces are from that. And they were taken to Portugal and Spain and places like that. And then so people started calling them European quinces, but
Right.
they really are for the Baltic
Baltic.
region, the
Mhm.
Black Sea region.
Mhm.
And this is my favorite. This is Kagonskaya. This is one of the newer varieties, a larger round variety that produces delicious pineapple peach
Yeah.
flavored fruit. And because it has to be,
It has to be cooked.
yeah, this is said to be able to be eaten raw, and you can eat it raw. It has a mild pineapple flavor, but it's not the same thing.
And I like lemons, but no, it's just too.
It's much,
too-
much better
Yeah.
cooked.
Yeah.
cooked with a sweetener, I think quince is among the best fruit in the world.
Or
so-
even if you didn't cook it and you wanted just to bring it into your house for fragrance, this is typically what was done in a lot of European households where they would bring in the fruits and sit it on the table for fragrance, and
And
it's they're
Ally said this
beautiful.
doesn't have problems, but it has one, and you can
It's true,
see
it
by
does,
some of the
yeah.
browning leaves, it has a eastern cedar rust. This and cedar trades a pathogen back and forth that affects the fruit. And I picked diseased fruit off. In fact, I just got up onto a ladder because there's no leaves, it's winter, and I picked all the diseased fruit. If I was to leave the diseased fruit on for years and years, it would take over the tree and damage the tree. So we always lose a little bit of fruit because of that.
And this is zone 4.
Probably zone 4,
I could
yeah.
think probably
yeah,
some of the
yeah.
different cultivars might
Yeah.
be a little bit less cold hardy, but generally
beautiful. This
speaking,
is Kagonskaya again.
beautiful.
We
Look
have
at
2 or
that.
3.
Large fruits.
Yeah. Diosporus virginiana, American persimmon. I love American persimmons. Most people are familiar with Asian persimmons. Those are not hardy in our region. Those are only hardy to zone 7, and we live in zone 6 with a few caveats.
Yeah.
American persimmons are tough as nails. They seem to almost not be able to be damaged by anything once they get established. I would strongly recommend you use a self-fertile grafted variety that has a reputation. We love Zukis, Zukis, and we love John Rick. That produces large sweet fruit. Asian persimmons are sweeter, but American persimmons have a more complex flavor. And you're looking at Zukis here. If I was to say what the flavor was like, I would
Oh,
say
yeah.
butterscotch and molasses is
Mhm.
close to how the flavor is. And again, ours have never been hit by any major pests, our grafted varieties. And around September, they start to fall off the tree. Here's the
Early
strange little
flowers, yeah.
flowers forming. And you want you want them to be dead ripe. You do not want to eat an unripe persimmon because they taste astringent and disgusting. And I will often go, there's a pollinator right there, shaking into a flower. I will often
Sneaking
just
into my
shake, I
slideshow.
will often just shake the tree and let 3 or 4 ripe ones drop down. That's the best way to, the tree kind of tells you how ripe they are.
This is a great photo showing ripeness. A lot of times the
Almost
fruit,
falling apart.
yeah, and the
yes.
fruit will get sometimes a little bit of spots on them. That's
they-
when the sugars, the carbohydrates have been converted.
And they look transparent. You
yeah,
can almost kind of
delicious.
see through them. I would say Zukis is great for people who have a small garden because it grows very slowly.
Mhm.
John Rick is a bigger, more stately tree and can
Yeah.
get more like 30, 40 feet.
And just showing the abundance.
Incredible, yeah.
And we found that we can actually freeze these and use them later for making like breads or pudding.
It's very
Just-
traditional.
yeah.
Native American tribes and colonial people took the pulp and mashed it up and made a kind of a
pemmican or
cake,
sweet
a
cakes, yeah. And again, just showing you a variety of, and all of them ripe. You can kind of see the skin kind of starting to crack. They just need a little bit of a kiss by some frost, as they like to say. Eleganus multiflora, this is Gumi. If you ever do get to come visit the Arboretum, you will see in the summertime, or maybe even early spring, why I personally love this shrub so much. First of all, its fragrance is completely heady, and I could smell the flowers from easily 30 to 50 feet away on a non-windy day. And everything about this plant, everything is really strange. They all have these little tiny scales, every part of the plant, the leaves, the flowers, and even the fruit, as you will see. This is what we like to say the well-behaved relative of autumn olive, which, as many of you know, is considered invasive in the Northeast, if not even in farther areas across the United States. I know a lot of people will pick the fruit in the fall to kind of, mediate the issue that it's such a problem plant. This sister species is actually really well behaved. And as Scott likes to say, over 20 years, how many little,
maybe 10 seedlings.
really, which is
hardly anything.
not a lot. And it's now a very sizable shrub. I know a lot of people who follow permaculture trends and practices love this plant, especially for orchard planting, because it is a nitrogen fixing shrub. Here it looks a little big and ungainly. A lot of times you can read in books that it only gets 6 to 8 feet. Ours is about 10 to 12 at this point, especially in the one
Let's
that's
say
in
10
full
10
sun.
by 10, 8 by 8, yeah.
And here's the fruit. I was talking about those really interesting scales on all parts of the plant, including the fruit. The fruits ripen in generally July, mid-July, if we're lucky. And they taste to me like little sour cherries, which I love because we can't grow too many prunus here. And they do have a fairly large seed, but the seed itself is edible. Again, talking about decorative qualities, this is stunning. We have two large distinct plants in different sites. One's a little bit more shaded. They both do well. They both have one bird nest at least living in there, and
There's thousands of berries
there's,
and it hardly
yes,
matters.
so
One bush is enough to feed a family.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get thousands of berries. That's why we say this is not invasive. If you put 30 of these bushes in, they might be invasive.
yeah, it might
But
not be great
one is
for-
enough to feed a family.
Right, maybe for orchard planting, we might want to rethink that, but for those of you who are homesteading or just want a beautiful, low maintenance shrub in your front or backyard, I really feel like this is it. And I make a juice and sauces using the gumi by
Yeah.
just using a ricer to get rid of the
Yeah,
larger
ricer is
seeds.
definitely handy when you're grinding down the fruit to.
Mhm. And I didn't say what zone that was. It's zone 4 for gumi.
Zone 4 and adaptable to clay soil and sandy soil, very adaptable. Another adaptable plant.
Hippophae rhamnoides.
Rhamnoides.
Thank you.
Rhamnoides. Rhamnoides.
Kind of annoides with not having any heat for 24 hours, but let's move along. This when we started growing this was sea buckthorn. But lately it is more and more being referred to as sea berry. It's really a marketing thing because the term buckthorn is considered, well, it is invasive. And so anything that says sea buckthorn, I guess plant marketers were feeling like we got to rename this. And I'm glad that they do, because I think that this very tough, adaptable, sun-loving plant
Must be in full sun only.
should be grown more. A lot of times people who are doing food forests want to plant this as kind of a protective green screen. The only thing to know about this is we both said within a minute, this needs full sun. Did I say that?
Yes.
Full sun.
Yes.
Or else
Yeah.
the plant will die, because it does have a habit of shading itself.
Yeah, you have to imagine the beaches of Siberia. I mean, no, wind whipped,
Yeah.
horrible hard soil, horrible conditions, very tough. A survivor plant.
So one of the reasons we wrote the book, because we get a lot of visitors and people are always asking us, so if this is dioecious, how can I tell what sea berry is male or female? Because the nursery didn't name it, or I can't tell, or I thought I got a female, or
My
I thought I got
shrubs
a
never produce
male, or I
fruit.
don't
Do I have a
fruit.
male and female? I don't know.
So I spent a good
3 years.
3 years looking to try and get the best photos I could. I'm going to keep working on it. So on the right with the arrows, those are the female fruits forming. So I just you could kind of see if you went really close, the old flower still there.
Those are about 1/8 of an inch.
I think even maybe even
Yeah,
smaller.
almost nothing.
And
yes.
almost nothing. And then on the left side of the screen are the male flowers, looking fairly large, even though they're teeny tiny, quite frankly.
And there's scales that pop open and
Mhm,
crack,
mhm,
almost like little pine cones that erupt.
mhm. But if you're lucky, you will be blessed with this delicious fruit. And now more and more days, they have been producing cultivars that you can supposedly eat fresh right off the stalks, which I guess is possible. I'll eat this, and they're not a cultivar that's bred necessarily for fresh eating. And like anything, sometimes depending on the environmental factors, the fruit can be really sweet and delicious, and sometimes it could be a little mouth puckering sour. Typically, we use the fruits for making a drink or an aid with a little bit of sweetener. It's like the best passion fruit tang like drink you
It tastes to me
ever
like
had.
passion fruit orange
It's
juice.
so
It's
good,
really good.
really good.
It also has 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, and incredibly nutritious.
Yeah, very nutritious.
That's why this was
nutritive.
put, this is why this is put mixed with aloe vera and used for face cream and
Pharmaceuticals.
cosmetics.
When
It's
I
really
when
great.
I had gone to Kiev, excuse me, about 8 years ago or so, and I was informed and I'd seen that they were using they had used sea buckthorn, sea berry on a lot of the victims in Chernobyl because of that pharmaceutical nutritive value of not just the berry, the pericap of the fruit, but also the seed oil itself. And here I'm showing you a picture of the foliage, which is narrow and it's kind of shiny and small, as well as a great plant for making tea. And I've been using the foliage where I do it either fresh or dried, and I make an herbal tea that's similar to like a rooibos. And again, the nutritive properties of the leaves with the berries, they're equal. So
There's only 2 caveats
yeah.
about this plant.
There
One
could
is
be
that it
more.
has a sharp thorns,
yeah,
but the other is you have to regard this plant as bamboo. This is
Mm-hmm.
not a plant for a small garden. We have had our plants run 20 feet, and I'm digging up those runners and propagating. So if I left those runners in place, this could probably go 40, 60 feet. So
Right.
any place you put this,
Yeah.
it can run 40 feet.
So beware.
This would be a great place for a long gravel driveway that's infertile, that has nothing grow,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a big open spot that you want to fill, but do not put this in a small garden. And you need a male and a female plant.
Dioecious. And just showing a couple more images here at the bottom, kind of off center left. It's a little fuzzy, but you could see a thorn. If you do happen to go get our book and put that in your fruit growing collection, you will read a lot more about strategies for how to get the fruit and other things we've learned really about all the plants that we're talking about. I'm just kind of want to move forward because we have a lot to share, and I know we have a limited time since we started a little bit late. So thank you everybody for staying with us here.
See the thorns there.
Oh yeah. Well, here we're going to talk about honeyberry. So Lana Sarah,
Sorolia.
Oh yeah, I'm having a hard time, peeps. And this is honeyberry, which is actually in the honeysuckle family. In the Hortus arboretum, this will be flowering. Actually, I have pictures from
Soon.
mid-February of
Yeah.
last year. And what's so interesting about this plant is that it's super tough. And part of it is because it's some of the plants are from Siberia and Canada and along the Northeast. So that these could be, they could take a zone 2.
Yeah,
although
Arctic.
certain cultivars and varieties now might be a little bit needing a zone 3 or 4, depending. There's been a lot of research done in Saskatchewan. There's a professor up there who's doing a lot of breeding. The one thing I will say about the flowers is that even if they get a little bit of snow on them or they get some frost, we haven't had major dieback, and it doesn't seem to affect the fruit production yet. I would say these are marketed as being much earlier than your strawberries being ripening in your garden. I don't know about that. I would say maybe a week.
No, I think it's probably 2 to 3 weeks before strawberry. It's the first edible thing that we get.
It is the first edible, but depending on environmental, last year, I think it was maybe 9 days, the difference, but doesn't matter regardless. It's really nice to have a shrub that's low maintenance, that produces a lot of fruit. You're looking at what we consider, or as I should say, marketers considered, they have 2 different types, what are considered, which are
Yes, there's the early blooming and the late blooming.
Right.
The early ones tend to be Canadian and Russian.
Yes.
And when you buy them, they will sell them in sets
Sets.
as either early blooming and late blooming. And the late blooming tend to be from Japan, and they have Japanese names. We have blue Hokkaido and blue Pagoda, I think.
Yeah.
They look exactly the
They do.
same, but they bloom a few weeks off. And so you want to try to get either early or late blooming
Yeah.
variety of set.
And as Scott said, because they're in sets and because there's been a lot of development in terms of breeding, you can find a honeyberry that grows to 2 feet tall to something that's 8 feet tall. So that there is a lot of variety in terms of finding the right thing for your spot.
Pick in a tight spot.
Ours are actually in a full sun spot in our zone 6 arboretum. And we would also kind of caution that
It's a
perhaps
little
having-
too hot. Ours are
Yeah.
in 12-hour sun, and these are more an Arctic plant.
Right,
So
so
we're
they,
like a little warm. In our zone, they should be in like part shade.
Yeah, or
They
at
would be
least
happier.
prefer a little less afternoon sun, let's put it that way. But we've been growing them in the same site for many years and have no problem. And in fact, one of the things I notice with these blocky rectangular looking kind of blueberry-like-ish fruit is that the fruit quality has improved every year. And that's true of a lot of fruits as they develop. But the flavor on these is actually quite delicious. I was not converted until recently. So, and
They're,
the
they're
fruits-
like a slightly tart blueberry.
yeah,
They're
but
pe-
there's, if you pick them when the insides are green, they're still tart. You have to actually wait. Once the fruit looks this color, you have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for them to fully develop before you should go and eat them. And generally, it's not a problem, even though wildlife like birds like them, because the fruit is somewhat hidden.
Yeah, it's like it's in the middle of the shrub.
Right, it's
can ki-
underneath the leaves.
You can kind of see there's fruit there actually, but it's
Underneath.
kind of hidden.
Yeah, on the lower left. Lycium barbarum, goji berry. Not a lot of people talk about goji berry, and I wonder why this is. Is it because they don't know about this messy viney shrub, or they don't know about this shrubby viney mess, or they haven't figured out how to grow it? And it took Scott and I some time to find the right place for goji. Goji appreciates having full sun, and we decided to embrace its messy nature. And it's similar to us. It's like how a forsythia grows.
Just kind of flopping all over the place.
And these are the small flowers that open up really like in August, and they're tiny, teeny, but once the shrub really starts to age, like maybe between 3 and 5 years old, it begins to produce an abundance of fruit. The fruit will persist until frost. Now, if you like a bitter, watery tomato, this is your plant.
Yeah.
However, most of us know goji as a dried fruit.
It's better
And
dried,
it's
yes,
very
much.
nutritive, and is put in like all sorts of granola mixes. So this is how I utilize this fruit. And one of the things that I've learned over time is that all of our dried goji in any co-op, no matter if it's organic or not, is coming from China, from this one province. And so I'd really love to see over the next 10, 20 years, farmers starting to grow goji berry as an American crop that's, the footprint being smaller.
She did say dried, however, there's a Chinese and American gentleman who's been to our garden, and
Gardens,
he
yeah.
said when he grew up, when he got sick, his mother made a chicken soup by taking fresh berries because they're very good for you, and using them as the base for the soup. So they are used in fresh in
Mhm.
China, but I think most people would find them palatable. By palatable, I mean they almost have kind of a licorice cranberry kind of flavor that's used in like granola and stuff like that.
And just again, showing the floppy nature.
Yeah, it's difficult to say how big these are. They
Yeah.
can sometimes be, let's say 6 by 6, 5 by 5, they flop and they
And
reroot.
easy, yeah, I was just gonna say, it's an easy plant that propagates itself, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not.
Most people would want to deal with this by pinning it up against a garden fence or staking it to deal
Yeah.
with it. We put it over this stone wall and just let it flop and kind of let it do its thing and prune it back.
And there's the fruit. And like I said, this will continue to produce fruit right up till your hard frost, quite frankly. So very productive. And
Ah.
just for timing, because I see that there's going to be some questions and we go another 15 minutes. And
I'm gonna
quite
put it
frankly,
fast.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're over promising what we want to talk about, but
Okay,
we're
so
going to
I'm gonna do it
hit
quick.
2 more things. One
Yeah.
is this one.
Maclora tricuspidata, Che. Mandarin melonberry. This is a member of the mulberry family and the fig family that produces remarkable, interesting fruit. And I would just say you want to get a self-fertile variety of female. The fruit is difficult to categorize.
Yep.
My wife feels that it tastes like lychee. I get a
Totally.
watermelon fig kind of flavor. The berries are spectacular and beautiful,
Look at that.
but if they get
Stunning.
pollinated, they are unpleasant, and a papery husk grows around
Is
the
it
seeds.
because what Scott's not saying is this is in nature, this is a dioecious plant with
There's a
male
separate
and
male and female.
female. So what we recommend
Is
is
a-
only planting
A grafted
grafted
self-fertile female.
female. Mhm.
These fruits are parthenocarpic, I believe, the way mulberry is. Sometimes it will set fruit without needing pollination. And you can see here, there's a huge amount of fruit. We are in zone 6, and this is more planted in the deep south, like in North Carolina and Georgia.
Mhm.
So when it gets cold, the fruit does start to fall off of our fruit as it's ripening, but we still get thousands of fruit.
And this fruit actually ripens in the beginning of October. So
The
we
end
were
of
lucky
September,
this last
October,
year
yeah.
where we did end up getting a little bit of rain in September, which helped the fruit formation, which is unusual because che in Chinese, although I don't know Mandarin or what, means stony ground. So it's kind of a weird thing, but it's a beautiful tree. I tell people it's very similar to like a Cornus crusa in terms of how it looks. It took about 5 to 7 years for it to fruit, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful, tough
And I
plant.
believe this cultivar is seedless
that.
female.
Yeah.
But there's 4 or 5. Norris is another one that's
Yeah.
really well known. The
Gorgeous.
fruit's about maybe an inch.
Yep. And there it is, just with a little bit of snow. It's
Yes.
not at its finest at this point, but if the snow wasn't there and you see the little black dots, that's a sign of ripeness. And just showing, you can see it is part of the fig mulberry family because of a little bit of harmless latex that that particular family
Makes
has.
a jam.
Yeah.
We cook and make jams with it.
And this will be the last one we talk about, although when we answer questions, I will flip through others. And this is really to kind of tease you guys into buying a copy of our book, which I'll post at the end, Cold Hardy Fruits and Nuts, if you don't already have it. This is all from the Hortus Arboretum, and we go into a lot of detail, more than we could do right now. So we'll just
Hey.
go quick through Medlar, really quick through Medlar, or no?
Allison and Scott, yeah, I just want to, sorry to interrupt. You're
fine.
welcome to go a couple minutes over if you need to. I don't want to rush your presentation.
How much is a couple minutes?
There's nothing in this space afterwards, so
All
you're
right, well,
welcome to
anyone who
kind of-
wants, okay,
Should
well,
we just keep talking,
should
go
we-
through all of them?
we'll go on until people start to like.
Or
leave
maybe,
us.
yeah, maybe pause for some questions and let people jump
What-
off if they
how about-
want and then
How about
stay
we
on.
pause, how
I
about
will-
we pause now and then we'll go from there? Is that okay? So we do a little pausing and ask some answer some questions?
That
Sweet.
sounds perfect.
That works for me.
Great,
Here are the questions.
okay.
First one comes from Maria. They ask, are there sources for these in your books and on nurseries?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
that was really important to us. I will say, things are always changing and in flux, so you know, don't despair if you find something and they're no longer have anything for the year, you know, just put them in your so-called
think there's-
Rolodex
I
to
think
kind of
there's-
remember.
I think there's 30 or 40
Yeah,
sources
easily,
in
yeah.
our.
Nice. Thank you. Next question. This was during while you were talking about pawpaws. They ask, can you spell this cultivar, the grafted one?
Sure. Sucus probably. S,
No,
Z.
no,
oh.
that's.
Oh, the
pers-
persimmon
yes, yeah.
pawpaw. What-
The
which we talked
varieties
about?
we had were Mitchell, which is MITCHELL. Oh, we have a mango, 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 and a
Taylor.
Taylor. The Pedersen pawpaws, the ones that people tend to are gaga about right
Like
now.
Susquehanna,
Those all have
yeah.
the names of Native American rivers, like Susquehanna. They're all named like that. Seneca is one, I think. There's probably 10 or 12 of them.
Mhm.
Again, I think they all are good flavored. Those are just larger.
Thank you. Next question is, do hazelnuts need lots of water? And how long for hazelnut trees to mature?
Hazelnuts will start to put nuts out fairly young. I've seen
Yeah.
bushes that are, 4 or 5 years old, that are maybe 3 4 feet tall, so already starting to put the flowers out. And we generally don't water them, and
Yeah.
we do have a drought period in the middle of summer, and we would have better nuts if we gave them a little water. By that I mean maybe every 2 weeks, a little tiny bit of water. Where we are in the Hudson Valley, we get consistent rain, and then there's a spot right in the middle of summer where it's dry for about a month, and it would help out our nut trees.
I don't think that they appreciate wet feet, but they don't mind being around a wet area
Yeah.
with the occasional, getting a little bit of water, especially in the spring.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again. We're having some clarification on the pawpaw that they were talking about was with the extra large fruit. What is the name of the grafted pawpaw with the extra large fruit? It was Peterson, Paris.
Pedersen pawpaws, yeah.
And
They're more, that's the name of a person who's been
Breeding them.
breeding
If
for
you
like,
look up Pedersen pawpaws, there's 20 or 30. Susquehanna is
Is
one of
that
them.
Pederson?
Pedersen,
yes,
Pete.
I think it's T.
Yeah, he's the University of Virginia, and he's in Virginia. And there's probably 20 Pedersen pawpaw varietals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And everybody knows these are a hot item, which means if you find these in a mail order thing, they'll always say they're a Pedersen variety. Usually, they're noted as being Pedersen.
Thank you. Next question is, do you start any of your trees from seed? How
Yeah,
do you prevent chipmunks, squirrels, and birds from eating your seed before they germinate?
That's a
I
great
have,
question.
right now we have endangered species, and even field mouse will get in. We have an enclosed area, and I have 1/4 inch landscape hardware cloth folded into squares like a little jail cell. And then I have the seeds in soil in those, so that they can't be eaten or dug up, because yes, wildlife will go in winter. Plum seeds, chestnut seeds, all these things are delicious to eat for animals, so they have to be protected.
Yeah, hardware cloth, it's your friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is, there's a quince on a neighbor's property, not sure what variety, but
Quince,
gets ravaged by pests burrowing into the fruit every year. Any idea how to prevent this or what it might be?
We haven't had that. Cedar rust is usually a thing we experimented. There are these polyester gift bags that are being sold that have a little kind of tie
string, yeah.
and a rubber kind of enclosure, and those can be slipped over fruit. Also, polyester painter bags. They're these bags that people put paint rollers in to wash their paint rollers, to dry them, so you can reuse them over and over and over. And those are fairly inexpensive,
But
and you can get in bags of them.
Specific to that question, without seeing a
Yeah.
visual or being on site, it's hard for me to do a consultation, but the person you're more than welcome to send us an email with the photo, and maybe we can take a look.
Yeah, one organic spray that's kind of
Yeah.
nice for those of you who don't know, and a lot of people know about this, is Surround. Surround is kaolin clay. When fruit ripens, it lets out gases which attract insects to attack it. So when you spray Surround and you get a bag of it, it's a powdery clay. It seals the outside of the fruit, and so that the fruit theoretically does not release gases as much, and also it creates a weird surface that insects don't like.
Yeah, it makes them a little like,
uncomfortable to
yeah,
lay eggs
like-
on. So Surround is great. It's inexpensive. However, unfortunately, you buy a bag of
It's like
clay that has to
50
be
pounds,
shipped.
yeah.
So if the shipping is more than the bag, but one bag will last your lifetime. You basically, to a gallon of water, you put 1 or 2 tablespoons of Surround in. It's fairly inexpensive to use. So
Thank you. Next question is, do you guys grow chestnut trees?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
the
talked
Dunstan,
about that
the
earlier
Dunstan.
on.
Yes, yeah. We don't go grow straight species because
Or,
the blights in our
right,
area
or
has
Chinese,
killed.
we're not growing straight Chinese or Japanese or anything like
But
that.
Japanese and Japanese and
Asian
Chinese,
would-
Asian would
yeah,
be somewhat
fine.
blight resistant to the, yes.
Next question is, goji berries are taking over my garden and the berries do not taste good. Presuming, do they taste better dry?
Yes,
Totally,
yes.
yes, and you can either like, a lot of people like to air dry them. We have a dehydrator. You can put them at the lowest setting in a dehydrator as a raw food, or if you don't have it, I guess you can use the lowest setting on in your oven, or like I said, you could air dry, which is a little hard because we're talking about October, right? So it's not, the sun isn't as hot, but yeah, dried, delicious, just like you would get at a store.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is, do you grow the goji from seed?
People can grow goji from seed, we don't. They're effortless to propagate. That woman who has too much, or whoever that
Yeah.
is, if you break pieces of that off and stick it in soil, that's how they propagate. Very, very easy to propagate.
You get to know her.
Find somebody that you know who has the bush and do it early before they start to grow. Very easy to propagate from cuttings.
Awesome, thank you. That is the end of the questions I see in the chat. If
Okay.
anyone has any, please chime in now. I'm going to put a link to their book again in the chat.
And we're happy to, if anyone wants to continue on, we'll go through a couple more. We have some time on our end now that we have heat and we have power, which if you're just joined us late, we had neither for a long while. And of course, I thought it was Friday and not Saturday, so I was not prepared. But let's talk about medlar, which is
Peleus germanica. The wonderful medieval name of open arse, because they thought it looked like a horse's rear end, an ancient plant related to hawthorn that gets beautiful, attractive white flowers. And it looks like a loquat too, because this is very closely related to loquat. This was brought in with the Crusades in the Middle Ages. So these date back to the 1500s when they started being cultivated. And so that's where you tend to find them. You find them in monasteries in Portugal, in Spain, and Italy. Very handsome plant. Self-fertile, grafted varieties. That's what you want to get. And this is the fruit starting to form. And there's a tradition which the polite word is bledding, which means rotting. You would pick the fruit in November, and you can see it's becoming fall, and we're getting fall color. The fruit would be picked and bledded, and it begins to ferment. And we didn't always like this, and somebody told us, don't pick it on your tree, leave it through the entire winter.
Yeah.
So this is actually a winter harvested fruit. We walk out in the middle of winter, often
like
there's
now.
snow, and pick these off the fruit,
Right.
off the ground and off the tree.
tree.
And the flavor has a spiced applesauce, cloves kind of flavor. Allison gets it. There you go. There's
raspberry
one, right?
like flavor. It's
yeah.
like raspberry applesauce. It's a coarse fruit, meaning
You spit
seeds out and you rip apart the skin, but I can guarantee you there's no one else eating medlar
fresh
anywhere near me
in January.
in or February, actually.
Yes.
There's still some remaining, but at this point in time, you know, at the end of the month, I probably would just leave anything for wildlife. And there's, you know, when it's productive, the fruit persists on the tree. And you could see variable sizes.
Passiflora incarnata maypop. I love American passion fruit. You need 2 vines for cross-pollination, and I would buy them from different people because these can run 30 or 40 feet. So if you get 2 vines from people, most likely you're getting the same plant.
Genetic, yeah.
Get 2 different cultivars or get them from 2 different places in the United States. You want to get 2 different genetic strains that are completely different. And we have the white and the purple, which are great. These are becoming popular now as a planting thing. So there's a
Gorgeous flowers.
pink
looking
flowered one
beautiful.
called Pink Pop. There's a more blue one called
Called
Blue Pop.
Yeah,
And we have the white one.
and this is the straight species.
The biggest thing is to get this through
Mhm.
the first couple winters, because this
Yeah.
is a southern crop. And if you can either protect it in a house as a house plant for maybe 2 years
Yeah.
till it gets big and then put it out, or bury it in mulch and put a bucket over it. And there's the white one, the
The
beautiful
olive.
white one. Spectacularly beautiful, also important medicinally. All the plant and the roots are used for and brewed for a natural
The
tea.
Teas, yep.
And this is
gorgeous.
the only cold hardy passion fruit that survives below zero. And these have survived into Minnesota 20 below zero, but they have to be protected for a while. And then the fruit comes in, and the only thing I would say, we planted ours in a greenhouse, but we have planted them outside and they have survived outside. Inside the greenhouse, the plant goes, oh, this is like Georgia and Tennessee where I'm from. And so they have run 40 feet under the ground and completely consumed our greenhouse. So they're a wonderful pain in the butt. So we have to kind of pull them up. But that being said, we end up with about 150 passion fruit every year to make passion
Easily.
fruit jelly.
Mhm.
They grow 40, 50 feet and then they die to the ground every year.
But
thank
it's
God.
actually a very easily maintained vine.
just have to rip it
You
up.
just pull it out. I don't have a problem with that. And as Scott mentioned, we started off by growing it outside when we were still considered a zone 5B environment. And it did flower, it did fruit, but we didn't get quite the amount of fruit we were looking for. And typically it needs to wrinkle in order to signify that it's ripe. However, you can bring unripened fruits inside and they will continue to ripen, but we just weren't getting the quantity that we wanted outside. But it's still doing very fine, that vine. So,
Yeah.
for those of you in zone 5 who want to try it, and just kind of showing you the tasty
And
reels
this
around the
lacks
fruit.
some of the flavor of tropical passion fruit. So when I make passion fruit jelly, I squeeze
Squeeze.
oranges and lemons into it because that gives it the citrusy flavor, but it makes great jelly.
This is Korean stone pine, Pinus koreana. It is a sister relative of our mighty white pine. And we love, I love the idea of having a beautiful screening plant that also doesn't just provide privacy or shade, but also provides nuts. However, again, this is one of those things that you read about, including in our book, that when it gets to a certain height, cones start to be produced on the trees. We haven't really found that necessarily to be
It's taken-
true. It's taken a lot longer, and we
Thankfully,
currently-
though,
yeah,
after 12 years,
we did get some cones.
we have cones forming. And the pine nuts you get in a store, most people think that those are from Italy. They
Right.
are not. Italian stone pines are very long and thin. The round ones, like what you
What you're
see
seeing
here,
here.
are probably from China
Yeah,
and Korea.
Mhm.
Very tough plant, zone 4.
And you need more than one tree, so like.
Because they're wind pollinated and they're going to get big. So these need a big
They need
open
the
space with
space.
lots of sunlight and good drained soil.
And one of the things that we tried to address within the book is that we're not suggesting that everyone plant all 50 like we did, because we are a show garden and we're trying to inspire and be an educational resource for people to learn which of the 50 would work well in their gardens. So if you have a space that you've been looking to green up and that has a lot of sun and that you would like to try something unusual and grow your own nuts, within 10 to 15 years, I would imagine you might have cones starting. Again, as Scott said, it's a zone 4. So
Ponoceros trifoliata, hardy orange, flying dragon. So this is a contorted form of sour orange. This is a very crude citrus, but this has survived 8 degrees below zero.
look at those thorns.
And it has also
crazy.
survived 18 inches of snow
Yeah,
a
we'll
dozen,
show some
a
photos of
dozen
that.
times. Formidable hooked thorns, kind of like almost like fish hooks. So
Yeah.
you don't want to put this near a walking path where you're going to squeeze by it. You want to give it a little space. Very tough.
Small fruits.
Small fruits that don't have a lot of juice, but still have a great potential for zesting. I made cranberry relish by cutting these up thin and mixing it into cranberry relish.
I make marmalades or juices. I mean, yes, granted,
Small and
yeah, you
crude,
have to
but
do about 50 oranges to get like a
a little juice.
quarter cup of juice, but
But still great.
worthy.
It's great to have, and you can see snow starting to fall on this one.
low maintenance, it's
Again,
gorgeous.
An ice storm,
ornamental,
that's what
yeah.
they look like
This
in
was
an ice
last year-
storm.
this was last
Yeah,
year's
I
or
think
something
so,
like
yeah.
that.
So there's about 6 inches of snow on the
Yeah.
ground there, very tough.
Mhm.
Growing in poor quality, all of the plants we have are in mediocre quality, heavy clay.
Clay soil.
We
We
put
amend things.
compost and kind of take care of our trees and
Mhm.
prune them and stuff, but very adaptable,
Yeah.
tough.
And just kind of showing off some of the ornamental qualities. If you're gonna go outside and check on things, you could
Look at
appreciate
them
the
under the
the
snow.
beautiful ice. You could see
We
the-
love beach plum.
Yeah.
I love wild American beach plum. Beach plum has an attitude of run over me with a car, I really don't care. All of the other prunus we have tried to grow has gotten one problem after another, after
After-
another. And I have 18th and 19th century grafted plum trees, and they're slowly being just gotten rid of. They just are they're
Too
like
much,
fighting a
yeah.
battle. This has an attitude of I don't care. It doesn't really matter what you do to me.
And look at that
Spectacular
glorious
blossom,
early spring
wonderful,
flowers, just stunning.
If you live in a suburb, this would be a perfect hedge plant in between houses as a privacy hedge.
Mhm.
Also, they tend to be 8 by 8, 10 by 10, so good height for kids to pick as a
See.
fruit plant. The only strike against this is inconsistency. Sometimes you'll have thousands of fruit, sometimes you get hardly any.
Right.
So that's the problem why there's never really been a beach plum industry. In good years, you can have thousands and thousands. And again, they're small, little, tiny wild plums, but you just bring in handfuls to eat.
Amazing out of hand. So we just stand by the shrub and eat them, or they make a great jam or sauce, as many of you know. And because they ripen over, a
Period of
period of
weeks.
couple of weeks, not too long, because in our arboretum,
hit.
they get hit by all sorts of critters. But you could see if you have a lot, you could share. Although one time we did go away for 3 days when they just happened to start ripening,
They
and
were
we
all
had,
stripped.
I think they left us 3. So anyway, just to show you a reference of
You-
size, they're
you need
small.
two. You need 2 for Prunus. This is Prunus marittima. You need 2
Two.
shrubs,
Mhm.
and there are some varietals that
Yeah.
for different size plums. And I have finally gotten the yellow seeds of the yellow plums. There's a colony in Maine that has sweeter plums that are all yellow. This is a wild plum, so there's variable. Some fruits are large and delicious. Some are kind of spit out and kind of like, that was mediocre. So
Zone 5.
zone 5.
This is ribes. This is a gooseberry in the ribes
Another
family.
great plant.
Another fabulous plant. Again, I tried to find pictures of it when I was trying to figure this plant out, and there were hardly any. So I'm happy to kind of share. Here you could see that the fruit is beginning to ripen. Here it's
That's Invicta. Invicta's an English variety, super sweet. There are tart gooseberries and sweet gooseberries. A lot of people think gooseberries are just sour, and it's not true. There's a variety of different flavors. And that's Tixia, a very productive, good tart variety. You use the tart ones for making jam and gooseberry pies, which are phenomenal. and
although we've had
heavenly.
lots of guests
Yeah.
just stand in front of a
Yeah, wonderful.
Tixia or a Hinamaki
And there are
just eat the
thorns you
fruit.
can see
Yeah.
on this, but it's fine. I don't mind picking stuff, but some people don't like thorns.
This is generally a low maintenance plant for
Yeah.
us. We go into it quite a bit in the book. One of the things that does have a problem with this is
Currant
the currant
worms.
worm. And if you only have a couple of gooseberries, it's a manageable thing to go out and squash when you're noticing defoliation happening. Generally starts from the inside toward the top. But there are some good organic products. Again, we talk about that in the book, if hand squashing isn't your speed.
Zone 4.
And there's
That-
just,
that- oh, this is
my
this is
favorite,
this
yeah.
is this wins out even over Tixia for
This is-
sugar. This is Jan's Prairie,
very delicious.
spelled J-A-N HNS. It's a person's last name. I believe this was found in Ontario
Yeah.
in the wild. It tastes like it's bred for sugar.
And just showing you the variety, we have about a dozen, and each year some are much more
Productive than
productive than
others, yeah.
others. It's really such a great plant, and this most of the cultivars are zone 4.
Yeah, and we're in zone 6 and we're in full sunlight. This would probably like a little shade. Ours get
Yeah.
a little burned up. They don't like the
Kind
hot
of like
part
the
of summer.
kind of like the
Yeah.
honeyberry, the same thing.
So they
yeah.
go to sleep and they look kind of ratty and bedraggled,
Mhm,
but then they
mhm.
come back and they produce thousands of berries. So it's fine, but something to think about. Red currant,
Another in the ribes family. So red currant is really low maintenance shade, part shade loving shrub. We grow this mostly, I think, in a more part shaded, although we do have a
some in full
cultivar in a
sun.
full sun.
yeah.
Seems to be fine. I love it. Again, I'm going to go on about the decorative quality of a plant. I just think the little flowers, when a shrub kind of starts to mature, you could just see just an abundance of not just the flowers, but then the fruit. This
And
is pink
pink-
champagne.
we would highly
Yeah,
recommend.
if you're going to get.
If you're going to get, this is good enough to eat fresh. If
Mhm.
you like the taste of pomegranate, these to me approach the taste of pomegranate.
Mhm.
This is a French varietal from the 1700s. It's called pink champagne.
It's actually a red, it is a
Wonderful.
red currant.
Just missing
just-
pigment,
Right.
so it's slightly
exactly.
sweeter. And
But
then
here's the
that's
pigmented. I think it's Red Lake,
Red
this
Lake.
one.
Red Lake.
A lot of people typically will use this for making jellies or jams or
Incredible fruit
but
preserves.
this actually, if you like a little bit of sour there, they have a great flavor, right? Standing right off the
Salads, yeah.
bush. And they grow on strigs, so you really want to wait till all of them have reached their color and maybe another week or two for full effect. And we have 2 more to talk about. I think most of you will be familiar with American elderberry, Sambucus canadensis. It's gone through some taxonomical changes, but we're going to just continue to call it this. This is something we did not plant at the Arboretum. This was courtesy of a bird.
Pooped out a seed.
A
Great thug, a great thug of a plant.
Yeah,
Growing in bad, abysmal clay soil,
terrible, right.
kind of flooded once in a while.
And the flowers are gorgeous.
And can be eaten.
And
yeah,
or used for
wonderful.
drinks. We had a friend make us wonderful fried fritters
Yeah,
using the fruit.
Dipped in
Yeah.
pancake batter, deep fried,
Delicious, yeah.
incredible.
And then I've made for many years, I would make a wine, and sometimes we even made a fruit aid. You just want to make sure that the blossoms are free of any insects, because this is a heavily used
Pollinator.
pollinator plant. Like all types of pollinators love Sambucus.
And the rest of the plant's poisonous. You
Yeah.
only eat dead ripe fruit,
No
cooked,
green
and
stems.
no stems and the flowers.
And that's the fruit developing. We also grow a couple different cultivars, although they're kind of dwindling down after 20 years, an Adams and a York that were bred to have larger berries, not really necessarily for fruit flavor. And then in the Midwest, there's been, in the last 10 years, a lot of breeding. We kind of mentioned that in the book about cultivars that are have larger fruit, that maybe the clusters hang up and not down.
If you
So,
only have
yeah.
one choice, Bob Gordon,
It
that's
would
supposed to be
be-
double size, supposed to
Mhm.
be really great. That's a newer one from Missouri.
And just showing what just a
Productive.
wild, a plant can produce. They are adaptable, as Scott said. You see
Bad,
them
yeah.
along the edges of the road. They really
Thugs.
they're thugs. Good
Great,
thugs.
great,
Good
great, great
thugs.
American
Great
plant.
medicinal
Really
plant.
undervalued for food, medicine,
Yeah.
everything.
I think that's changing though.
Yeah, we should be more regarded.
And this is a plant that I'd like to bring more awareness to. I think it's probably one of my top plants. Don't listen to me, other plants, when I say this. This is Schizandra chinensis, also known as the 5 flavor berry. In the wild in China and Taiwan and the eastern parts of Asia, this grows in temperate forests on over trees growing up towards sunlight, and it is dioecious. We're actually growing the self-fertile variety called
Eastern Prince,
Prince.
highly
Thank you.
recommended. by Eastern Prince. Otherwise, you have to get separate male and female plants.
And initially, this plant was brought in the turn of the century, not for its fruit, but for its tiny little flowers that look like baby magnolia flowers. That's why its common name is also known, or was known, it's less used, as the magnolia vine. And here you could see the flower inside has been pollinated, so it's starting to fruit. Again, the fruit, it's actually such a low maintenance shrub for us. It does need to be in a part shaded,
Yes.
cannot be in full sun or you'll fry it. And here you could see for a self-fertile variety, how prolific it is. The handsome berries are underneath this beautiful, deep, lustrous green foliage. And those are the fruits. If you stand in front of the plant and eat it out of hand, it has these flavors to me that are like sweet, bitter, salty, pungent, and sour, hence the 5 flavor. That's where the name came from. It's one of the top 50 fundamental herbs in Chinese medicine. Scott does not like to eat this out of hand. It is very piquant or sour, tangy. I use these as a dried ingredient. We make an aid out of them, like a drink, a beverage. I mix into kefirs. And the one thing I will say about this plant is, again, if you can find Schisandra berry, whether it's in a dried form or powdered, it is not being produced in the United States. It's all coming from East Asia or China. And so I'd love to see in the next 20 years that start to change, because it's completely hardy here. It's a zone 3 plant. It works in a more shaded environment. So for you farmers that have a spot where you can't grow, you know, a sun-loving fruit tree, I feel like this is the plant for you.
And 2 things, we saw carbonated soda
Oh, yeah,
with
that's right.
Schisandra juice in it.
And I just saw a tea, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what you should know is if you put this and cook it down and strain it with a sweetener, it approaches very close to strawberry lemonade. It's like lemon
Delicious.
peel with like a berry finish.
Mhm.
So it has all this applications for alcohol and dry
Teas and
teas, and it's
cooking.
extremely good for you. This is basically used in Russia and in Siberia as an athlete's
yeah, that's
endurance drink. So
Mhm.
this is dried and used and sold in health food stores, and
Yeah.
is kind of for energy for athletes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
And thank you so much for
Thank
sticking
you.
through all
Yes.
our 21 plants that we wanted to talk about. And here's an image of our book, and you could follow us on Instagram. I try and do a posting once a day or once every other day as an educational piece, not just on edibles, but on all types of plants. And you could visit us at our website. And if there's any other questions, we'll hang around a little bit longer. And we just want to thank NOFA
Yes.
for having us here, for being patient with us
A
about
rough
our
start.
rough start. And yeah, just such an honor to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you for presenting. We appreciate
Yeah,
the
thank you
info
both.
sharing. Couple questions to round off our day here. And first one is, what is the cold hardy passion fruit cultivar?
They're all about the same, which is
The name.
zone
no,
5.
The name.
The varietal that I showed you, we had the normal one, which was purple,
Straight
and then we have
species.
the white, which is alba. So it's Passiflora incarnata alba. There's 2 or 3 cultivars. One is called Pink Pop right now.
Blue pop.
Blue Pop. They have slightly more pink or slightly more blue. Those are varietals.
I would say right now, if you really were interested, stick for a straight species in the alba. The newer cultivars are, I feel, a little still new in terms of their hardiness and how they'll
Yeah.
grow out. But you know what? We test everything. That's what growing is about. It's, you know, our version of being in a science lab. So for those of you who have the time and the space, why not try it? And then let us know, are you enjoying growing blue pop or pink pop? And that way we'll pick up on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next question is, I lived in Central Virginia. Passion vine grew wild, smells terrible. Is it related to your passion plant?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, it is native. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't
I
know
haven't
that it smelled
No,
bad.
I haven't noticed that the foliage smells bad.
No,
No, I guess it
no.
depends on the.
Maybe if there's a lot of rotting fruit, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It has a
Thank
fairly
you.
mild
Yeah,
smell,
I wouldn't.
but
Thank you. Next question is, what was the name of the pine tree?
It's a Korean stone pine, Pinus koreana,
Koreana.
Koreana.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next question is wondering whether you grow sour cherry. I know they can't grow well in lots of places, but I'm curious.
So yes,
We've killed ours too.
How many?
At
3,
least 2,
4?
yeah.
Yeah, I tried early on when yes. Go
There,
ahead.
there is an exception. We,
Yeah.
for a while, grew Nanking cherry, which
Yeah.
is an incredible small sour cherry bush, and a disease has hit ours like the last 4 years. Maybe I would still say people should try Nanking cherry. It's like zone 4
And
or
it's
3.
in the book. We didn't talk about it yet because we're still trying to figure out our
The
problems so we
disease,
can
we
share
can't.
information, but it grew for maybe 8-10 years and we love it and we're just trying to figure it out. so
Yeah,
that we
it
can
had
share
no
that
pests,
info.
and then
Yeah.
suddenly something moved in. So I
Yeah.
would try Nanking cherry if you like cherry,
Sour cherry,
cherries.
yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is, hard to tell the size of those citrus fruits. Are they like the size of a ping pong ball?
About, yeah, maybe
I would
just
say
under.
no, ping pong, for which fruit? For the hardy
So,
orange?
yeah, the 1.25 inches,
Yeah,
1.5 inches.
I'd say slightly larger. I haven't played ping pong in a
Uh,
while, so I don't
Maybe
know.
approaching 2 inches.
Little larger than a golf ball, not that I play golf.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
The book says.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is, for those of us with little space, can you recommend if any of these plants you have covered can be grown in containers?
Yes, honeyberry can, for sure. We didn't talk about it in this, but in the book, blueberry can.
Yeah, there's dwarf blueberries. Yeah, you want to get small
You
dwarf
probably could
things.
do the hardy orange in,
Possibly,
possibly
yeah.
do the hardy
Yeah.
orange in a deep pot.
Yeah, you want to get self-fertile things that are,
Like
one
real
will
small.
you'll get, yeah.
Thank you. Next question is, what parts of elderberry are toxic?
The green, all the green parts of it. And the fruit has to be dead ripe, means it's dark black color.
Technically, the fruit has
Should-
chemicals in it that is very upsetting to our
Stomach.
digestive system. So it does need to be cooked. I think if you ate a couple out of hand,
Which we have,
which
it's
you
okay.
you
But
can
don't
always,
wanna
you
eat
don't want to
black.
go that route, but it's all the little green fine stem parts. So it is a little bit of work, but work is good.
Awesome, thank you. And to wrap up here, I'm going to share a survey link into the chat for those that are still remaining with us. If you can, please fill out this survey. We use the information to inform our plans for next year's conferences and events and things like that. And one little last word is NOFA New York's annual winter conference would not be possible without the support of all our generous sponsors. We would like to specifically thank our app sponsors, Hudson Valley Farm Hub and Honey Dog Farm. To learn more about these organizations and their work, please visit them in the marketplace or online. And again, thank you to our presenters. This was wonderful, very informative,
Thank you.
lots of engaging questions. So thank you for presenting.
Our
You're welcome.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you. It was
you.
an
Thank you
honor.
so much.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.